Hey guys, welcome to week 10 of distance learning. This is going to be our second to last class video, but it's the last one where you're actually going to have any assignments. So week 10 is going to be your last week of grades, and then week 11 is going to be me grading and just giving you guys some final updates about the way the rest of the school year, and then maybe a little bit of information about how next year is going to go. So week 10, this is it for assignments. Really quickly, last week you guys had done a really amazing job. Right now I'm actually filming this on Friday, so you still have 24 hours to get in your quiz codes and take those vocab quizzes, and I already have over 50% of you guys who did it, so that's awesome, and I'm expecting to see those numbers go up. My 5th period and my 7th period, y'all brought your class averages up, which is amazing. First period, you're still at over 87% for a class average, which is great. So you guys are doing amazing. A really awesome gift for me for the end of the year would be bringing all of those up even more and getting more work turned in. So this final assignment that you guys have, it's going to be worth 2 grades, okay? So same as you've been doing every week, you're going to read the novel, except this time you're going to finish it. So whatever you have left in the book, if you're a little behind, that's fine, just finish the novel. You'll do a quick write based on whatever the prompt is that I give you, and then you'll have a final book project. So you're going to have a bunch of really cool different options. You'll just look at it in the Google Slides and you'll pick the one that you like the best, and then you'll complete that one and make sure that you follow all the instructions that go with that assignment, okay? All of the assignments that you have are going to be due on May 31st. So the official last day of school would have been June 2nd, but I'm going to make all of the work due on May 31st because I have to get in my grades before the grade book closes. And once it closes, it doesn't matter if you've turned in all the work or not. If it's not in by the time the grade book closes, you have zeros for your missing work. So by May 31st, everything needs to come in. That includes your final assignments, that includes all the makeup work from all of the stuff that you were missing before. Everything needs to be in because once that grade book closes, the M's that go in for missing get calculated as zeros, which will bring your average down, okay? Speaking of low averages, we are finalizing our list for summer school, and the administration is also looking at possible retention, so people who might need to repeat the 6th grade. So I've been in touch with a lot of parents. Most of you guys have heard from me at some point, but if you are failing the 6 weeks or even failing my class for the whole year, there's still an opportunity to bring up your grade as long as you get in all of your missing work. You might have noticed I am grading super leniently this final 6 weeks because I know this is a weird situation. So pretty much anything you guys give me, I'm going to give you a grade or an opportunity to bring that grade up, okay? So please just make sure that you get in all that missing work by May 31st. I'm going into school on Tuesday, May 26th to clear out our classroom. I think I'll probably be in the same one next year, but I don't have a lot of space to store stuff. So if you left anything in that room that you want, like maybe you left a jacket that you know, or there's a personal book that you had left under your desk, please reach out and tell me so that I can pack it up and have it ready for you to get next year when you come in 7th graders, okay? I, next year, have just signed my contract, so I will be teaching again next year at Jordan Middle School, but it looks like I'll be doing 6th grade again. So I'm going to be sad not to be able to teach you guys next year, but I'm also excited because you can come visit me and tell me all about the awesome things that y'all are doing in 7th grade. Library books, Ms. Eichler has been sending out, there's a designated day every week to drop off library books. If you left a library book in my classroom, I'll just take it down to the library, okay? And you don't need to worry about it. But if you have it at home, have your parents check their emails because she's been contacting everyone who has books to turn in. I am super proud of you guys. Again, this is going to be our last week of work, but I'm going to make one more video after this to kind of just close out the year. And I'm also going to create one video that has the entire rest of the refugee book recorded on it. And I'm also going to be leaving these videos up on my YouTube channel throughout the summer. So if you get really bored and decide that you want to go back and catch up on everything you missed from the refugee novel, you're going to be able to do that, okay? So for this week, just to review your 2 assignments, you'll finish reading the book, you'll do a quick write, which is going to be worth 1 grade, okay, 100 points for that, and then the second part is going to be the project of your choice. And for those of you that are watching this on Saturday, the reason I am making this video earlier than usual is because it's a holiday weekend and I'm actually planning to be away from my computer on Monday. So this still gives you the full amount of time to ask questions and get help if you need it, and then turn it in by May 31st. And as always, if you need to reach out, you know my email, you can comment on the assignment and I'll get right back to you. But I'm super excited to finish the year strong with you guys. Y'all have done a really amazing job. I'm gonna go get the animals so they can do a final little pep talk for you guys, and then I'm gonna read some more of the novel. All right, so have a great week. All right, and Jove says it would be a real treat if everybody turns in their work for this final week. Right, buddy? Or get it? A treat, because he's eating treats. A real treat. Also, Mars got dressed up just for you guys in his special bow, and he says, maybe you guys will start the work right meow. Get it? Right meow? Like right now, but he's a cat. Right meow. Okay, here's the novel. Joseph, somewhere on the Atlantic Ocean, 1939, 22 days from home. Joseph watched his sister splashing around happily in the swimming pool on A deck. Other kids chased each other around the promenade. Watched movies, played shuffleboard. For as much as he'd wanted to grow up, Joseph wished now that he could join them, be a little kid again, cheerfully oblivious to what was going on around him. But he wasn't a kid anymore. He had responsibilities, like keeping his sister and his mother safe. Papa had told him what the concentration camps were like. He couldn't let that happen to Ruthie and his mother. Are you ready? It was Posner. He stood in the shadow of a smokestack looking around nervously. Joseph nodded. He had agreed to help take over the ship. He had to do something, and this was the only thing he could do. What about Shindig and his firemen? Joseph asked as they walked. We've got a distraction for them down on D-deck, but we have to move fast. The rest of the group came together near the social hall. There were 10 men, including Joseph, and they all carried metal candlesticks and pieces of pipe. Some of the men were Papa's age, like Posner, and some of them were in their 20s. Joseph was by far the youngest. 10 men, Joseph thought. A minyan. 10 Jews came together to worship, not to worship, but to mutiny. Posner put a small length of lead pipe in Joseph's hand, and suddenly the weight of what Joseph was about to do was very real. Lead on, Posner said. Joseph took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. He led his fellow mutineers into the maze of crew quarters. Just outside the bridge, in the chart room where all the maps were stored, they came across Ostermeyer, the first officer. He looked up from the map cabinet with surprise, but before he could do anything, Posner and one of the other men grabbed him and pushed him through the door to the bridge. Joseph was startled by how rough they were being with Ostermeyer, but he tried to swallow his fear. Taking over the ship wasn't going to be easy, and this was only the start. There weren't as many people on the bridge as there had been when Joseph visited, just one officer and 3 sailors. The sailor at the ship's helm saw them first, and he let go of the steering wheel to dive for an alarm. One of the passengers got to him first, slamming into the helmsman and sending him tumbling to the floor. The mutineers quickly surrounded the other sailors, threatening them with their makeshift clubs. And they had done it. Just like that, they had taken the bridge. Joseph's heart raced as he looked around, wondering what was next. Stretched out before them was the great green-blue Atlantic Ocean, and beyond that, still days away, Germany and the Nazis. Up on the little platform at the back of the room, the steering wheel teetered back and forth, and Joseph wondered crazily if he should jump up there and turn the ship around himself. Send for the captain, Posner told the first officer. Warily, Ostermeyer went to the ship's intercom and summoned Captain Schroeder to the bridge. As soon as Captain Schroeder stepped onto the bridge, he understood what was happening. He spun to leave, but Joseph and one of the other men blocked his exit. Who's in charge here? Captain Schroeder asked. What do you mean by all this? Posner stepped forward. We mean to save our lives by taking over the ship, he said, and sailing it to any other country but Germany. Captain Schroeder put his hands behind his back and walked to the middle of the bridge. He looked out at the ocean, not Posner. The other passengers will not support you, and my crew will overpower you, he said matter-of-factly. All you are doing is laying yourselves open to a charge of piracy. Posner and the others looked around at each other nervously. Joseph couldn't believe they were so easily losing their resolve. We'll hold you here as hostages, Joseph said. They'll have to do as we say. Even Joseph was surprised he'd spoken up, but his words seemed to put a little more steel into the mutineers' resolve. Captain Schroeder turned to look at Joseph. The crew will obey only me, he said calmly, and I'll give no order, no matter what you do, that will take my ship off its set course. And without that order, you can do nothing. What will you do? Pilot the ship yourself? Joseph blushed and stared at the ground, remembering his crazy urge to take the wheel when he didn't even know how it worked or where to go. Captain Schroeder helped his fallen helmsman back to his feet and led him to the steering wheel. The man was still shaking from the attack, but he took the helm and straightened the ship on course. You have done enough already for me to prefer serious charges against you, Captain Schroeder said, still frustratingly even-keeled. If I do, I can assure you that you will most certainly be taken back to Germany. And you know what that means. Joseph steamed. He did know what that meant, but did Captain Schroeder know? Really know? How many Germans really understood what was happening in the concentration camps? Joseph knew because his papa had told him, had shown him when he jumped overboard and tried to kill himself. Joseph wasn't about to let his mother and sister end up in one of those camps. You would do that to us? One of the men asked the captain. You were doing it to yourself, Schroeder said. Listen, I understand and sympathize with your desperation. Posner huffed. You have no idea what we've been through, any of us. Captain Schroeder nodded. No, you're right. But no matter what's been done to you, what you're doing now is a real criminal act. By law, I should have you all thrown in the brig. But I'm willing to overlook all this if you leave the bridge right now and give me your word you will take no such further action. Joseph scanned the faces of his co-conspirators and saw only panic, fear, surrender. No, Joseph told them. No, he told Captain Schroeder. My father told me what happened to him in those camps. I can't let that happen to my mother and my little sister. We can't go back to Germany. The first officer took that moment to try to pull free from the men holding him. There was a struggle. The other sailors moved to help him, and the other mutineers flinched, ready to fight. Ostermeyer, no, Captain Schroeder commanded. Cease and desist. That's an order. The first officer froze, and Posner froze too, the lead pipe in his hand still raised in threat. Nobody moved. The captain raised his hands. I promise you, men, he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. I promise you on my honor as a sea captain that I will do everything possible to land you in England. I will run the ship aground there if I must. But you must stand down and promise me no further trouble. Posner lowered his pipe. Agreed, he said. No, Joseph wanted to argue, but everyone else agreed. Joseph threw his pipe to the ground and left without the other men. They were going back to Europe, and there was nothing he could do about it. Isabel, off the coast of Florida, 1994, 5 days from home. They were going back to Cuba, and there was nothing any of them could do about it. So this was the last verse, Isabel thought. After everything they'd been through, after everything they'd lost, their climactic ending wasn't going to be climactic after all. Theirs wasn't a son cubano with its triumphant finale. Theirs was a fugue, a musical theme that was repeated again and again without resolution. Their coda was to be forever homeless, even when returned to their own home, forever refugees in their own land. The U.S. Coast Guard had found them. Geraldo, Isabel's mother said, but Papi didn't answer. He sat frozen with all the others as a bright white searchlight clicked on. A ship motor, a real motor, attached to a real propeller, roared to life. Geraldo, Mommy said, it started. No, he said, it's over, for all of us. They're going to take us to Guantanamo. The searchlight swung around toward them. No, Mommy said, hands on her bulging stomach, her voice tinged with alarm. No, I mean, it started. The baby's coming. The head of every single person in the little boat turned in surprise. Isabel sat down with a splash in the water. She didn't know what to think, how to feel. She'd been put through the ringer, the elation of leaving Cuba, the exhaustion of the storm, the horror of Yvonne's death, the relief at seeing the lights of Miami, the despair of running into the Coast Guard ship and knowing they would never get to El Norte. And now her mother was having a baby, Isabel's baby brother. Isabel could only sit lifelessly and stare. She had nothing left to give. I'm not staying in that refugee camp at Guantanamo behind a barbed wire fence, Lito said. That's just trading one prison for another. I'll go back to Cuba, back to my home. Castro said he won't punish anyone who tried to leave. Unless he's changed his mind again, Amara said. It was Luis who saw the Coast Guard searchlight sweep past them on the water and point somewhere else. Maybe none of us will have to go to Guantanamo, Luis said. Look, they're not after us. The Coast Guard is after someone else. Isabel watched as the searchlight found another craft on the water a few hundred meters away. It was a raft full of refugees just like them. More Cubans, Amara asked. It doesn't matter, Senor Castillo said. Now's our chance. Paddle for shore, quickly. Isabel spared her mother a look, then grabbed a water jug carved into a scoop and started rowing as hard as she could. So did Lito, Amara, and the Castillos. But be quiet, Lito whispered. Sound carries a long way on the water. Oh, Isabel's mother cried. Shh, Teresa, Papi said, holding her hand. Don't have the baby yet. Wait until we get to Florida. Isabel's mother gritted her teeth and nodded, tears welling in her eyes. The lights of Miami got closer, but they were still so far away. Isabel glanced behind her. In the darkness, she could pick out the lights of the Coast Guard ship alongside another dark craft. Shadowy figures were moving back and forth between the two. They were taking the refugees on board to send them back to Cuba. Oh, Isabel's mother cried, her voice like a cannon shot in the quiet. Row, row, Senor Castillo whispered. They were so close. Isabel could see which hotel rooms had their lights on and which were off, could hear bongos beating out a rhythm over the water. A Roomba. The current's taking us north, Luis whispered. We're going to miss it. It doesn't matter. As long as we're standing on land, we're safe, Lito said, his voice thin from exertion. We just can't be caught on the water. Row. Oh, Isabel's mother screamed, her voice booming out across the water. Beep, beep. The Coast Guard cutter made the same sound as before, and its searchlight lit up their little boat. They'd found them. No, Isabel's mother sobbed. No, I want to have my baby in El Norte. Row, Senor Castillo yelled, giving up entirely on being quiet. Behind them, the Coast Guard cutter's motor roared to life. Isabel churned at the water, bending her flimsy jug paddle in her desperation. Tears streamed down her face, from sorrow or fear or exhaustion, she didn't know. All she knew was that they were still too far from shore. The Coast Guard ship was going to catch them before they reached Miami. Mahmood, Hungary, 2015, 16 days from home. Sirens, soldiers shouting through bullhorns, screams, explosions. Mahmood was barely aware of everything that was happening around him. He lay on the ground, curled into a ball, trying desperately to draw a breath that would not come. His eyes felt like bees had stung them, and his nose was a streaming cauldron of burning chemicals. He made a choking, gurgling sound that was somewhere between a shriek and a whimper. After everything, he was going to die here on the border between Serbia and Hungary. Rough hands pulled from the ground and dragged him away, his sneakers twisting and scraping on the dirt road. He still couldn't see a thing, couldn't force his eyes to open, but he felt his chest beginning to work again, the barest tendrils of air reaching his lungs. He drank the air in greedily. Then he was thrown to the ground, and someone pulled his hands behind him and tied them together with a thin piece of plastic. It cinched painfully tight, and Mahmood was lifted again and rolled onto the flat metal bed of a truck. He lay there, still gasping for breath, the plastic zip tie cutting angrily into his wrist as more people were tossed into the truck beside him. Then Mahmood heard the truck doors slam and the engine start, and they were moving. Mahmood's breathing finally came back to something like normal, and he was able to sit up and open his bleary eyes. There were no windows in the van, and it was dark, but Mahmood was able to see the other 9 men with him, all of them red-eyed and crying and coughing from the tear gas, and all of them handcuffed with zip ties, including Mahmood's father. Dad, Mahmood cried. He worked his way across the floor of the bouncing van on his knees and fell into his father. They put their heads together. Where are Mom and Walid? Mahmood asked. I don't know. I lost them in the chaos, Dad said. His eyes were red rings and his face was wet from tears and snot. He looked terrible, and Mahmood realized he must look just as bad. Mahmood thought the van would stop soon, but it drove on and on. Where do you think we're going? Mahmood asked. I don't know. I can't reach my phone, Dad said, but we've been in this van for a long time. Maybe they're taking us to Austria. No, one of the other men said. They're taking us to prison. Prison? For what? Mahmood wondered. We're just refugees. We haven't done anything wrong. The van stopped, and Mahmood and the other refugees were unloaded into a building one of the other soldiers called an immigration detention center. But Mahmood could tell it was really a prison. It was a long, single-story building with a barbed wire fence surrounding it, guarded by Hungarian soldiers with automatic rifles. A soldier cut the zip tie off Mahmood's wrists. Mahmood expected the relief to be instant, but instead his hands went from numb to on fire, like the tingling needles he felt in his leg after he fell asleep, times 1,000. He cried out in pain, hands shaking, as he and his father were hurried into a cell with cinder block walls on 3 sides and metal bars on the front. 8 other men were pushed inside with them, and up and down the hall were more prison cells filled with refugees. A soldier slammed the barred door shut, and it locked with an electric bolt. We're not criminals, one of the other men in the cell yelled at him. We didn't ask for civil war. We didn't want to leave our homes, another man yelled. We're refugees, Mahmood yelled, unable to stay silent any longer. We need help. The soldier ignored them and walked away. Mahmood felt helpless all over again, and he kicked the bars in anger. There were similar cries of innocence and rage from the other cells, but soon they were overtaken by separated families trying to find each other without being able to see from cell to cell. Fatima, Walid, Mahmood's father called, and Mahmood yelled their names with him. But if his mother and baby brother were here, they didn't answer. We'll find them, Dad assured Mahmood. But Mahmood didn't understand how his father could be so sure. They hadn't found Hana, so what made him think they would find Mom and Walid? What if they had lost them forever? Mahmood was beside himself. This trip, this odyssey, was pulling his family apart, stripping them away like leaves from the trees in the fall. It was all he could do not to panic. His breath came quick, and his heart hammered in his chest. I don't believe it. They took us almost all the way to Austria, Mahmood's father said, checking his iPhone at last. It's just another hour by car. We're outside a little town in the north of Hungary called Győr. Almost all the way to Austria, Mahmood thought. But instead of helping them along, the Hungarians had thrown them in prison. Hours passed, and Mahmood went from panic to frustration to despair. They sat in the cell without food or water and only one metal toilet attached to the wall. All Mahmood could think about was Mom and Walid. Were they in some Hungarian prison somewhere too, or had they been pushed back across the border into Serbia? How would he and Dad ever find them again? He slumped against the wall. I have to say, this is the worst hotel I've ever stayed in, Dad said. He was trying to joke again. His father was always joking, but Mahmood didn't think that any of this was funny at all. At last, soldiers with nightsticks came to their cell and told them in Arabic to line up to be processed. We don't want to be processed, Dad said. We just want to get to Austria. Why not take us all the way to the border? We never wanted to stay in Hungary anyway. A soldier whacked him in the back with his nightstick, and Mahmood's father collapsed to the ground. We don't want your filth here either, the guard yelled in Arabic. You're all parasites. He kicked Mahmood's father in the back, and another soldier hit Mahmood's father again and again with his stick. No, Mahmood cried. No, don't, stop. Mahmood begged. He couldn't bear to see his father beaten. But what else could he do? We'll do it. We'll be processed, Mahmood told the guards. That was all it took to surrender. The guards stopped beating his father and ordered everyone to line up. Mahmood helped his father to his feet. Dad leaned heavily against him, needing his son for support. Together they shuffled in line along the far side of the hallway, away from the cells. Men and women and children watched them with hopeful eyes as they passed, looking for their husbands and brothers and sons. And then Mahmood saw them, his mother and Walid. They were in a cell with other women and children. Yusuf, Mahmood, Mahmood's mother cried. Fatima! Mahmood's father cried with relief, and he stepped toward her. Whack! A soldier clubbed Mahmood's father with his nightstick, and Dad went down again in a heap. Mahmood and his mother cried out at the same time. Stay in line, the soldier yelled. Mahmood's mother reached for them through the bars. Yusuf, she cried. No, Mom, don't, Mahmood cried. A soldier clanged his nightstick against the metal bars, and she retreated inside her cell. Mahmood got his father up again and helped him into what the soldiers called the processing center. There, clerks sat behind long tables, taking down information from the refugees. When Mahmood and his father got to the front of their line, a man in a blue uniform asked them if they wanted to claim asylum in Hungary. Stay here? In Hungary? After you have beaten me and locked my family up like common criminals? Mahmood's father asked, fists clenched and shaking. Mahmood still had to help him to stand up. Are you joking? Why can't you just let us go into Austria? Why do we need to be processed? We don't want to stay here 1 second longer than we have to. The policeman shrugged. I'm just doing my job, he said. Mahmood's father slammed his hand flat on the table, making Mahmood jump. I wouldn't live in this awful country even if it was made of gold. The policeman filled in an answer on the form. Then you will be sent back to Serbia, he said without looking up at them. And if you return to Hungary, you'll be arrested. Mahmood's father didn't speak again, not even to make a joke. Mahmood answered the rest of the clerk's questions about their names and birth dates and places of birth, then helped his father back to their cell with the other inmates. Mahmood's mother cried out for them again as they passed, but Mahmood's father didn't acknowledge her, and Mahmood didn't respond. He knew that would only bring down the wrath of the guards again. Head down, hoodie up, eyes on the ground. Be unimportant. Blend in, disappear. That was how you avoided the bullies.